All right, let's dive right in. We're about to explore a really powerful story about loss, the kind that breaks your heart completely, and the incredible spiritual journey that can come from a world that's been shattered.
Just think about that for a second. That's one of the most devastating things you could ever hear about grief. It just hangs in the air, right? And it makes you wonder, who was he? And how could his death possibly be so catastrophic that it equals losing your own mother? To get that, we have to go to a very, very dark and lonely place. So let's set the scene. Our story centers on a scholar, Bediüzzaman Said Nursi, and at this point in his life, things are about as bad as they can get. He's living through a period of just absolute hardship. I mean, look at the contrast here. On one side, you've got his reality. He's been forced into exile in a remote village. He's sick, he's getting older, and he is completely, totally alone. And on the other side, there's the one single hope his heart is clinging to, his nephew, Abdurrahman. And you have to understand, this wasn't just family. He was his spiritual son, the one he saw as his successor. And just imagine the torment of this. For 6, maybe 7 agonizing years, they've been apart. There's no way to communicate. So he has no idea where Abdurrahman is, or even if he's still alive. That kind of not knowing is its own special kind of torture, right? And then, right there in the middle of all this despair, when it seems like things can't get any worse, something totally unexpected happens. A letter arrives, and it shatters years and years of silence. It's from Abdurrahman. And this isn't just some casual, hey, how are you note. No, this letter is a full-blown declaration. He pours out his heart, saying how much he regrets ever leaving his uncle's side. He talks about how disgusted he is with the empty, worldly life he'd been chasing. And now all he wants is to come back and serve his uncle. He even promises to become a scribe, to copy and spread Bediüzzaman's life's work, the Risale-i-Nur. You can just imagine the impact this had. It was like the sun bursting through the darkest clouds you've ever seen. All that pain, the exile, the sickness, the loneliness, it just melted away. In this one letter, his world felt whole again. Hope wasn't just restored, it was overflowing. So he's on top of the world, right? He's picturing this joyful reunion, a future where his legacy is safe. But this incredible high, this moment of supreme hope, is about to be met with an equally supreme tragedy. Just 2 months, that's it. That's all the time he had to feel that joy. And then the news hits him like a ton of bricks. His beloved nephew, his spiritual son, his chosen successor, had died. And that brings us back to that quote from the very beginning. But now we feel it. Now we understand the full, crushing weight of those words. This wasn't just grief. This was the death of his entire world, the end of every single hope he had for his life on Earth. He was completely and utterly alone. So how do you come back from that? Well, it's right here, in this moment of absolute desolation, when all worldly hope is gone, that a profound spiritual cure starts to reveal itself, a remedy that's born from the deepest pain imaginable. This brings us to a question that anyone who's ever experienced real loss can understand. When the very foundation of your happiness is just ripped away, what do you do? What's left? How does a heart that broken even begin to heal? In that moment of crushing sorrow, this phrase came to his heart, Ya baqi antal baqi. It's a kind of zikr, a remembrance of God. And what it does is, it's a declaration that shifts your entire focus away from everything that fades, everything that dies, and turns it towards the one single reality that is eternal and never changes. The source material describes this as a really powerful 2-step process. Think of it like spiritual surgery. The first time you say it, Ya baqi antal baqi, it's like a scalpel. It cuts those deep, deep attachments your heart has to temporary things, to Abdurrahman, to his plans. And that cut, well, it hurts. It creates a wound. But then the second utterance becomes the healing balm, the medicine for that very wound. It's an affirmation that if the everlasting one remains, he is enough. Everything else can go. But here's the thing. This wasn't just some idea in his head, some psychological trick. This spiritual surgery and healing, it actually led to something miraculous happening in the real world. So picture this. After this whole experience, Bediüzzaman goes back to a small house in Barla. He's accepting no visitors, he's in total lockdown. And yet, out of nowhere,
A young man named Kulunli Mustafa just shows up asking for lessons. And against his own rules, Bediüzzaman feels this pull, this compulsion to let him in.
So let's just remember what he lost. One person. Just one. But that one person was his entire world, the focus of all his worldly hopes. And now, he was gone forever. And now look at this. This is what he was given in return. He understood in that moment that this young man was a sign, a sample of a divine promise. The message was clear. Because he had turned his heart away from the temporary and toward the eternal, God wouldn't just replace his loss, he would multiply the blessing. He was promised that for the one Abdurrahman he lost, he would be given 30 more just as dedicated. So this is an incredible, very personal story, but it holds a universal message inside it for all of us about how we deal with loss and attachment.
So what can we take away from all this? Well, there are really 3 big ideas here. First, if you tie your ultimate happiness to things that are, by nature, temporary, it's inevitably going to lead to pain. Second, real lasting consolation is only found when we redirect our heart's deepest love toward what is eternal. And finally, and this is the really hopeful part, what you lose or give up for the sake of the eternal is never truly lost. In fact, it's often returned to you in a much greater, more beautiful form.
This is the message that Bediüzzaman ended up giving to his own heart. He's basically saying, look, you've seen this one sample. You saw how this devastating loss was transformed into an even greater blessing. Because you've seen this proof, you can be absolutely certain that he can and will heal every other wound you will ever face. And that really leaves us with a final question to think about in our own lives. When we face the loss of people, things, and moments that we love, when all the temporary stuff fades away, what is the one thing that remains? And is that one thing enough? Thanks for digging into this with me.